The alarm ripped through the shuttle before I even had my helmet sealed, and the whole cabin tilted sideways like the moon itself had decided to swallow us. My name is Ethan Wells, Sergeant, Search and Recovery, and I was 3 seconds away from being thrown through a bulkhead when the pilot screamed that we had lost the left stabilizer. Metal groaned. Sparks poured from the ceiling panels. I grabbed a strap and held on while the shuttle spun down through a storm of orange dust, and somewhere below us, in the middle of that dust, sat the real reason we had been sent to this moon in the first place. A crashed enemy scout ship, and inside it, according to the last signal our scanners had caught, a life sign that refused to die. We hit the ground hard enough to crack 2 ribs on the man strapped in beside me. I did not have time to check on him. The moment the door blew open, I was already moving, because command had been very clear before we left orbit. Get to that wreck before anyone else does. Find whoever is inside. Bring them back alive if you possibly can, because a captured enemy commander is worth more than 100 destroyed ships. The dust outside was thick and orange, and it clawed at my visor like it wanted in. I ran through it with my rifle low, following the beacon on my wrist display, and the wreck came out of the haze like a broken rib cage, metal plates torn open, one wing folded completely backward. I climbed through a gap in the hull and found her. She was folded into the pilot's seat, held there by a harness that had done exactly half its job. One arm hung wrong. Blood, dark and thick, had soaked through the fur along the side of her face, and her ears, long and pointed, twitched weakly at the sound of my boots on broken metal. Fox-like eyes opened halfway, gold and sharp even through the pain, and focused on me with a kind of alertness that should not have been possible for someone that badly hurt. Vulpine, Kesh military, the 3 ochre bars stitched into her torn flight harness, told me exactly what she was before she said a single word. A commander, not a foot soldier, not a technician, someone whose capture would change the shape of this entire war. You should not be here, she said, in careful, clipped words. Her voice shook, but her eyes did not. Leave now. Report the wreck. Let your officers decide what to do with me. That is protocol. Protocol says I get you out first, I said, already cutting through the twisted harness with my blade. The deciding part comes later. I am your enemy. Right now you're a person bleeding out in a chair. We can argue about the enemy part, once you're not dying. She tried to pull away when I reached for her, claws flashing weakly, but there was no strength behind it. I got an arm under her ribs and pulled her free, just as something deep in the wreck let out a groan, and a section of the ceiling came down exactly where her seat had been a second earlier. We hit the dust outside together, hard, and I felt her whole body flinch against the impact she was too injured to brace for. Behind me, the rest of my recovery team was already shouting through the storm, calling coordinates, calling for a second shuttle, since ours was now a smoking ruin on the hillside. I did not wait for them. I got the commander onto my shoulder, felt her claws dig into my arm hard enough to draw blood through the suit fabric, and I ran. We did not make it to a real base that night. The second shuttle never arrived. Something in the moon's thin atmosphere was jamming every signal we sent, and my team scattered into 3 separate groups, trying to find shelter before the storm turned violent. I ended up alone with her in a shallow ravine half a mile from the wreck. Both of us pressed against a wall of black rock while orange dust screamed past overhead. She was fading. I could see it in the way her eyes kept losing focus, the way her breathing had gone shallow and uneven. I had a basic field kit, nothing built for treating an alien body, but injuries are injuries no matter the species, and I packed the wound in her side as best I could, and splinted her arm with a strip of metal torn from her own downed ship. You are wasting supplies, she said through gritted teeth. On someone your command will likely order executed the moment I am well enough to be useful only as information. That's not my call to make, I said. Mine is to keep you breathing until someone higher up decides what happens next. You could leave me, report a body. No one would question it. I'm not going to lie about a body I didn't make. She studied me for a long moment, gold eyes narrowed, like she was trying to work out whether I was telling the truth or performing kindness for some tactical reason she had not spotted yet. Whatever she saw, it made her stop arguing, at least for a while. The storm did not let up for hours. I built a small wall out of loose rock to block the worst of the wind, and I sat beside her with my back against the ravine, watching the sky turn the color of a fresh bruise as the dust thinned into something almost like night. She would not let me touch the bandages again without gripping my wrist first, not fighting me, just holding on, claws pressing hard enough that I knew there would be marks in the morning. Every time the pain spiked, her grip tightened, like she needed something solid to hold on to so the pain would not carry her away completely. "Your kind heals slowly," she muttered at one point, teeth clenched. "We heal faster, but every stage of it burns. There is no comfortable version of this for either of us." "There's no comfortable version of getting crushed by a collapsing spaceship either," I said, "so we're even." That earned me the smallest exhale that might, in a better light, have been something close to a laugh. Vulpines, I would learn over the following hours, do not sleep easily around strangers, and they sleep even less easily around people they are supposed to consider enemies. So instead of resting, she stayed awake, jaw tight against the pain, eyes tracking every shift of the wind outside our little wall of rock. I stayed awake with her, because someone needed to watch the wound for infection, and because leaving her alone with her thoughts in that condition did not feel like the right thing to do. I talked to fill the silence. Nothing important. Stories about my sister's terrible cooking, about the 3 times I failed my pilot certification before finally passing on my 4th attempt, about a dog I had growing up that used to steal food directly off the dinner table when no one was looking. None of it mattered. What mattered was giving her something to focus on besides the pain and the cold and the fact that her entire crew was somewhere out there in the storm, possibly dead, possibly captured, possibly both. Somewhere near the 30th hour, exhaustion finally won. I felt her weight shift against my arm before I understood what was happening. Her head had dropped, just slightly, resting near my shoulder, breathing slower than it had been all night. And then I heard it. A low sound, steady, rolling out from somewhere deep in her chest, vibrating faintly against my arm, where she had fallen asleep, without either of us noticing the exact moment it happened. I went completely still, afraid that moving even slightly would break whatever this was. Her eyes snapped open half a second later. She had felt me freeze, and the sound cut off instantly, like someone had thrown a switch. "That did not happen," she said, pulling back so fast the movement clearly cost her, a sharp hiss of pain slipping through her teeth, despite the effort not to show it. "Sure," I said. "I am completely serious. If you repeat this to anyone, to your command, to mine, to anyone at all, I will deny every word of it, and then I will make the rest of your life extraordinarily difficult." Vulpine military doctrine has an entire section dedicated to the efficient creation of difficulty. I have studied it closely. "Commander, I don't exactly have anyone to tell right now." That landed harder than I expected. Something shifted in her expression. Not soft exactly. Her face was not built for soft, but quiet, in a way that made her look less like a captured enemy officer, and more like someone very far from anything familiar. "No," she said finally. "Neither do I, at the moment." We did not speak about it again that night, but something had changed. She stopped fighting me when I checked the bandages, and when the pain spiked again near dawn, her claws found my wrist on their own, and this time, it did not feel like she was only holding on because of the injury. The storm broke just before sunrise, and with it came the sound I had been waiting all night to hear. Engines, distant but real, cutting through what remained of the dust. Rescue found us on the 4th day, not the 1st. The jamming signal across the moon had scattered every team into isolated pockets, and it took that long for anyone to piece together enough clear sky to send a working transmission. 4 days of shared water rations, shared silence, and a wound that slowly, stubbornly, refused to get worse instead of better. By the time the recovery shuttle finally landed near our ravine, she had told me small things. Not military secrets, nothing that mattered to the war, just fragments, that she had commanded her own vessel since she was young enough that her superiors had doubted her, that she had lost half her crew to an ambush 2 years earlier and still counted their names some nights when she could not sleep, that the fur along her jaw turned darker with age, and hers had only just begun to change. I told her about growing up on a farm that never made much money, about joining the service because it was the only door that seemed open at the time, about a promise I had made to my mother that I would come home in one piece. A promise I intended to keep, even if it meant carrying an injured enemy commander across half a moon to make it happen. None of it changed the fact that when the shuttle doors opened, she would go one direction and I would go another. We both understood that. Neither of us said it out loud. When the recovery team reached us, she did something I did not expect. Kesh commanders, I would later learn, do not say thank you in words. They say it through gesture, and the highest gesture available to a Kesh officer is to hand over their own sidearm, unprompted, to someone they have decided to trust completely. She placed her weapon into my hand without a word, watching my face carefully while I understood exactly what the gesture meant. "Your people will want to question me," she said quietly. Once the medics had her strapped onto a stretcher, monitors beeping steadily beside her for the first time in 4 days. "Study me. Every possible piece of information a captured commander carries, they will try to remove from me one way or another." "Probably," I admitted, because there was no honest way to deny it. "When they ask what happened out here," she continued, her hand finding my sleeve, claws resting there lightly this time, no pressure at all, just contact, "you will tell them I was uncooperative. Difficult, nothing more." "I'll tell them you were professional," I said. "Everything else stays right here, on this moon." For a moment, I thought she might smile, if Vulpine faces were built for that kind of expression. They are not really, but something moved behind her eyes that came close enough to count. "Good," she said, "because if you ever repeat what you heard that first night, I promise you, Sergeant, I will deny it until my very last breath, and then I will personally make certain it happens again somewhere you can hear it clearly, just so you remember that I keep threats and promises filed under entirely separate categories." They loaded her into a different shuttle than mine, under a different set of guards, and for a while, I believe that was the end of it. A strange, dangerous, 4-day chapter, filed away under classified, closed and forgotten the moment the official reports were signed. It was not. Weeks later, back on my own ship, my commanding officer called me into his office, holding a data slate with an expression I could not quite read. "Explain something to me, Wells," he said, sliding the slate across the desk. "Why does the commander of an entire Kesh fleet division file a formal request, through proper diplomatic channels, asking specifically for you, by name, to be present at every future prisoner exchange, every negotiation, every joint operation her forces are involved in?" I looked at the request. Her name was there, printed clean and official, alongside mine. Not a demand, a request, filed with the kind of formal weight that suggested she had pushed it through channels most officers her rank would not have bothered fighting for. "I think she just found me easy to work with, sir," I said. He did not look convinced, but he let it go, because there was no regulation against being requested by name, and because whatever had happened on that moon had clearly worked in favor of easing tensions between two sides that had spent years trying to avoid exactly that kind of trust. I never told him the rest. 6 months after the crash, I stood across a negotiation table from her for the first time since the moon, her arm fully healed, the darker fur along her jaw, now marking the passage of time rather than injury. Diplomats from both sides argued over borders and resource rights, while she and I sat quietly at opposite ends of a long table, saying nothing to each other that anyone in the room would find worth noting. But when the meeting broke for the day, and the room finally emptied, she paused beside my chair, close enough that no one else could hear. "You kept your word," she said simply. "I said I would. Humans make a great many promises, Sergeant. Very few of you actually keep them. I'm not most humans." She studied me for a long moment, the same careful, evaluating look she had given me back in that ravine when she was deciding whether to trust a stranger holding a blade near her injured arm. Whatever she found this time seemed to satisfy her more completely than it had then. "No," she agreed quietly, "you are not." She walked away without another word, back toward her own delegation, and I did not follow, because some things do not need following, they simply need to be understood. Over the following years, the request never changed. Every exchange, every negotiation, every moment, two sides needed a reason to trust each other, even slightly. My name appeared on the list, and so did hers. Officers on both sides speculated about why. Some assumed old debts, some assumed politics. None of them asked me directly, and I never offered an explanation, because the true one belonged to a ravine, a storm, and 4 days that had never made it into any official report. I still remember the sound clearly, even now, low, steady, warm, despite the cold night around us, a sound she swore never happened, and that I never once repeated to another living soul. Some promises are easy to keep because breaking them costs nothing. Others are easy to keep because keeping them means holding on to something rare, something earned in the middle of a storm neither of us expected to survive. That one, I kept simply because I wanted to.